We are now at episode 2 of the Warbound podcast. Again, we have Theo here today, and we're going to talk about Nerub'ar Palace.
Yeah. Welcome everyone. Second episode. And yeah, gonna talk some raid, which I'll try not to be too critical of. I'm definitely an M plus Andy, but I've actually really been enjoying this raid, so I've actually got a lot of comments and a lot of things to say. I've actually surprised at how much I found myself
I'm
enjoying
a
not just our normal raid nights, but going in like on alts and stuff,
I'm
whether it's
definitely
LFI
more
or
of a
whatever.
raider in this game, and from Legion to most of Shadowlands, I thought Mythic Plus was killing this game. Gear progression was skewed only towards Mythic Plus. If you weren't doing Mythic Plus, you were falling behind. But with the War Within now, if you're not doing delves, you're
Exactly.
falling behind. as we
Exactly,
can
which that's a whole other
as
story.
we can show with my Great Vault, the highest piece of gear I get is from delves. But there is a reason for it. You can't get higher than what you get in delves, and with raid, the item levels scale up and stuff. Um, so we're just gonna kick it off because we only got a half hour. I haven't started my timer because I'm a casual learning how to podcast, and so we're gonna start that timer now. 30 minutes on the clock. 30 minutes to go over all of Nerub'ar Palace. So Theo, the first boss, Ulgrax the Devourer. Thoughts from a healer's perspective?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a first boss. I mean, nothing terribly exciting. I think I think it's really fun to heal at least the main phases of it. Obviously having that stack mechanic. Anytime you have something like that where it's very obvious, like okay, this is the major damage event. This is where you throw your cooldowns. That makes it, fun to heal. I think the only thing I don't like about it, and I don't think it's anything that will be impacting us just yet. I can see it becoming very annoying once we are like later on in the tier where, it's on farm. We're just trying to do our normal heroic clears or doing normal clears in the next couple of weeks. Just because like anytime there's a boss where there's like an immune phase or like he disappears and just spawns ads and then we have to go bring the food all to him. While that was cool the first time, I could see that getting really old really fast. But I don't know if maybe that's just me. I like first bosses like the first one in Aleris, where just a dragon does dragon things, very straightforward. We
Yeah,
blow it up and that's it.
I
I
think
could see it a little annoying once you like, especially if you know 3% away
yeah,
and
that's
then he
what's
goes.
gonna happen is we're gonna be pushing him, and he's gonna be at like 10%. We're gonna have to do the whole food phase, but I think it's interesting in that like the tanks can pull the ads closer to the middle, and the food phase all of a sudden becomes way better in terms of speed when the ads are all dying in the middle of the room instead. Really, yeah, just kind of a first boss. Like nothing. The food mechanic's interesting. The heal debuff is interesting. Now that I'm back into tanking, I think the last boss I tanked was the jailer in like progression, and that was like a I was thrown into it kind of situation. Really, Blizzard does not know how to make fights for tanks, but little like things to make a fight easier, like having the ads in the middle of the room, pulling the ads into the middle of the room, is better. Is like a tank mechanic, an unwritten tank mechanic that the fight will go better if you don't have to run as far for the food. Also, just the fact that like hunters and paladins can just clear all the webs and stuff. just again makes those classes like must brings and stuff. And uh, yeah,
Well, maybe not
it's
must brings for
it's
us, but
it's not Shriekwing, which is I'm gonna mention Castle Nathria a lot because when we talk about raids, I'm just gonna mention Castle Nathria because it's literally S tier raid. I don't even know if there's another raid that's even close, boss for boss. How awesome Castle Nathria was, and Shriekwing is one of the best intro bosses of all time.
yeah. No, I would agree with that. Even though Creakwing does do a similar thing where uh there's like the immune phase, but I do think that is a lot more interesting. Look, the Shriekwing immune phase is a lot more interesting than like, okay, we're just going back and forth bringing the food to the boss. That Shriekwing phase was like actually something you had to think
Yeah,
about.
hide and seek
Um,
is way better than
yeah,
just bringing food to the boss.
yeah.
Overall, not bad. It definitely was like uber easy on normal for us, uber easy on heroic.
I
We,
mean,
we cleared it week
we won
one on heroic,
Strata
right?
High.
Uh,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
even hit an enrage timer on it because we were all like 580, but it was still killable.
Hmm.
Not really sure where our guild is. I know only 4 guilds had killed bosses 5 and 6 on the raid on our server on Wormrest Accord. So, which is a fairly like it's an RP server. It's a fairly casual server. We had
Hmm.
no guild clear Mythic kill Jaden until like
Hmm.
end of Shadowlands because someone realized that no one had ever cleared it on their server. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
but yeah, I would say in terms of first bosses, it's pretty good. It's above average.
Yeah, it's a first boss.
I'm
Yeah,
trying
I
to
would say.
like go through a bunch of first bosses in my head real quick to see like which is the best ones. I
I
think you're
mean,
right.
it's not.
Aberrus is pretty good. Just dragons doing dragon things and stuff. So overall, pretty good. I like it's got varied mechanics. The soak, the webs. Get out, group up. Also, so different things. I really like this new the more people are in the web, the better the less the soak is. I think that's a really cool way to punish, your group, your melee not running back to get in
Yeah,
to the thing.
yeah.
All right, so we got limited time, so let's move on to Bloodbound Horror. This was kind of the first boss we kind of hit a little bit of a progression wall with just trying. It truly is a tank positioning fight where
Hmm.
the tank has to figure out where to put the boss when the other team goes down so that they don't lose time. It's also a DPS race in terms of, like your group. When you split the raid in half, all of a sudden you can't get carried by, a large item level player or a player with a lot of skill because, the raid is split in half or whatever. And so I think I think it really tests the DPS of the whole group when you split it in half like that. But again, it is a tank position. I'm just glad that our raid team is very nice and helps everyone position, helps both tanks position. Uh, if there isn't a obvious position to go to and stuff like that, I'm glad that Heineken put the 4 markers down instead of just 2 and stuff like that. But
Hmm.
like, yeah, it's a boss. It's interesting. Um, I don't know from a healer perspective if there's a lot of damage going out or anything. It seems like a lot of stuff is just kind of if someone gets hit by it, they die. I know there's a bubble,
Yeah,
I guess, a
yeah.
absorb
There's
shield.
a heal absorb, which a lot of times I found heal absorbs mechanics to be really annoying, but this didn't seem that bad. Um, I also don't know if the reason why it didn't seem that bad was this was the first boss that I actually learned how to play my class because I was using
Oh,
the
that's right.
non-optimal hero talent because I'm again mostly a Mythic Plus Andy, and while I did have a raid build, I was still using Chrono Warding, the preservation hero talent that you do in Mythic Plus, until one of our other healers was like, yeah, Flame Shaper's really busted right now. You should probably try it. And I was like, yeah, I don't want to just switch to a new talent and do it with no practice. This was also I did that, no practice, switched to it, and I was like, oh yeah, okay, this is
It's
insane. Like
broken.
any damage event, yeah, any damage event goes out, I just slam engulf and it does insane healing. So
Nice.
that it felt really good, like it was very predictable damage.
I did
But
feel
again, I don't know
like
if that's really
I've
playing
noticed it in
over
LFR
time.
especially. Uh, Groups tend, and I think our group even didn't like was focusing down the tank ad, which should be the last ad killed because it
Mm-hmm.
I can
Mm-hmm.
move that ad, and it'll chase me. So the other ads are what the but like it's small ads, caster ads, then the tank ad. But overall, like it's cool. Like I like that there's this old god blood thing going on
Yeah.
in Ajkahet. It's cool that we drop down into the pits of the city. I will say, as we move on to the third boss, the gap between Bloodbound Horror and Sirkin is annoying. Having to jump on different
Oh.
flight paths to climb up constantly is just
Yeah.
kind of annoying to me. And then there's like 6 packs between. Like you finally get to the top of the stairs after landing on like 4 platforms, and then there's like 6 packs between that top platform and the boss, and it's like, okay,
Yeah.
I
I
guess I
do. I do
shouldn't
feel like.
complain. Like it's better than the Zool trash in Uldir, so I
Yeah.
guess I can't
True.
complain too
True.
much. But
Yeah.
it's
I
kind of
mean,
like,
just for
what's
that
going
whole.
on?
Yeah. Not necessarily for that part, but like I guess the feel for the whole raid. I do feel like they were trying to go for kind of like a Throne of Thunder
Yeah, or a
sort of
Black Temple,
feeling where
right? Like
you
there's
do
a
the
couple
boss
of
and then you
raids.
drop. Yeah, you're going up from the bottom. Yeah, you're going up from the dungeons. But I feel like we basically did, rather than kind of slowly work your way up, you're just kind of
You just jumped up with
immediately
flyers.
jumping up.
Yeah,
Yeah, you
it's
just
just
immediately
like
jump. I was like, okay,
I expected
okay,
this.
what's
Like,
going on?
okay, now you're gonna
Yeah,
fight a mid-level boss. That's like
yeah,
this. It's not the blood of the sewers, but it's like a little bit higher up. But yeah, Black Temple's the first raid I believe in WoW's history to kind of do that, where you go in the sewers and then work your way up through the whole place.
kind of
And
chaotic, but yeah, yeah.
kind of Karazhan. Karazhan's just a giant house.
It's just a
So
tower. It's not a like sewers, but
yeah,
yeah,
I guess
yeah,
if you're doing
yeah.
it
That was
correctly, like you're down at the stables first or whatever, doing horsemen,
yeah.
and then working your way up to the top of the tower. But yeah, it's uh, you kind of like have one boss in the basement, and that's it, instead of
Mhm,
like
exactly,
2 or 3 or different levels. It just felt like
exactly.
then we were back at the
It
top,
doesn't
and
feel like
now
a
we're
raid.
fighting, the captain of the ascended Nerubians, and
Hmm.
this is the fight I learned. Well, I knew because I'd watched guide videos and stuff. I knew they had said don't turn your back on the boss, and you really don't learn a lesson until you do it. And as a prot warrior, I turned my back on the boss when she did an expose, and it just straight up did 4.5 million to me, and I died. It's also the boss that I think I missed my first taunt swap and straight up killed Zeo in normal. Uh,
Hmm.
so it's it's a good boss. I like it because I love bosses that have a mid taunt mechanic. Where the first boss that did this that I remember doing was in Nyalotha. It was the like devourer dog down in the like living section of Nyalotha.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
he like threw out like a massive poison on a tank, and then immediately like bit. And if you had both, you would have just straight up died. And I think
Hmm.
if I remember correctly, I think it wasn't like something a tank could even like immune out of or like defensive out of. It was like if you have X ability on you, bite will kill you. Like it was like an instant death mechanic. But I loved that. I just love tank swaps like that, where it's one ability, then it's another ability, almost within 5 seconds, and the tank has that much time to swap or to tank swap. So from a tank, it's a lot of fun on this boss. Overall, I think it's like mostly thematic with what this person's supposed to be, the captain of the ascended Nerubians. I'd have gotten the one-handed weapon from this person in my vault on heroic, on LFR. I just keep getting this sword from this person, which is fine, I guess. But we're falling a little bit behind, so we're going to move to Rashan. Because Surkon's I feel like, pretty self-explanatory. You move out, tanks have something to deal with. Honestly, the boss doesn't move a lot. It's honestly a pretty mid-fight. As far as third bosses go. There's multiple times where like the third boss is definitely a check all of a sudden. I can think of like the crab in Shadowlands was like third, fourth boss. Yeah, Halandris was definitely like is your raid group competent check kind of thing. So Rashan or Rashanan. It's okay. It's an interesting fight, I think. I like how contained they've made a flying boss feel for a fight, that it's like landed there, and because of the webs and the poison mechanic, like the raid has to stay within almost 20 yards of the boss the whole fight, even though she's jumping around from spot to spot. And it's kind of fun, like, as a warrior, heroic leaping over stuff and then charging into the boss as she moves. But again,
that's same thing with like an evoker. I just jump over. Otherwise, I could see it being. I mean, even just doing an LFR on my priest, that was a little different. But on my evoker, I'm just like
priests don't have like anything, so they can't solo delves. They can't. They just literally your group Andy if you do a priest. Yeah, it's a good boss. I think I like that it's a continuation from the Dawnbreaker dungeon.
Yeah, no, that's always fun.
It's kind of interesting. It's fun. It's fun having different stuff.
I do like because I believe, at least as far as I know, it's the first time we've seen this specific visual for an ability. But the way the poison wave looks, very obvious which way it's going to go. That's kind of just a cool mechanic for how you kind of spread it out, but it's not just take debuff to this point. You have to actually be like paying attention and be like, oh no, this is the way my debuff's going. I gotta go that way.
Yeah, so and the raid has to like also be aware of it and go, oh, okay, I need to be on. I need to be in between these two lines, rather because there really isn't too much time on heroic between when, like, if you have two people targeted that are on opposite sides of the room and they both get the opposite side debuff and they have to cross each other, all of a sudden the raid has like maybe a 5-10 yard sliver to fit into, and so everyone has to pay attention to when that comes out, which is pretty cool. I think it's a good ability. Brood Twister Avanax. I like this fight. I think it's cool. I think it's a lot. It's typical tank swap, but I love the model. I loved Gahoon and BFA. I love that just giant slug model. I hate the trash leading up to this. The stag flip is the most annoying mechanic I've ever dealt with. The first time it hit me, it flipped me all the way to the boss room. Like, pillars, walls did not stop me. So that was fun. But overall, these kind of like... I tanked... I guess I did tank in Dragonflight for a little bit because I had to tank our progression Broodkeeper fight. And I think I might have been tank for a Razageth for a little bit. But I know I tanked Broodkeeper, and I was on the Broodkeeper team anyway that was cracking eggs if I wasn't tanking. So I think this is an easier Broodkeeper fight from Razageth's raid. I can't remember the name of it.
From Vault.
Vault of Incarnates. Yeah, I think it's an easier fight. That I like that there's just different ads to pick up. that they do different things. The casters have to deal with the worms. Tanks pick up the giant crab spiders. It's a pretty. You just move around the room. I don't think it'll be too hard in heroic once we get more gear. For those, I guess, for listeners, our guild is 4 out of 8 right now in heroic.
Mhm.
And really the first 4 bosses of heroic, except for the blood boss, didn't really give us any trouble. So Brood Twister and Nexus Princess are definitely the first walls we're hitting, but they're both kind of bosses that just like more stamina, better gear. I think the average item level of our raid is probably 600, and I think we're killing bosses that 610 is what's intended. We're at bosses that 610 is what's intended, and
Yeah.
like I said, 4 guilds have killed either Brood Twister or Nexus Princess on our server.
Yeah.
So
On our server. Yeah.
yeah, it
Yeah.
seems like a decent
No, I
boss.
mean, yeah, it'll be interesting. I did think at least, I mean, since obviously we haven't done it on heroic
Yeah,
yet,
the
I think
rest of these
pretty much
we're
that
not talking about heroic. We're only talking about
yeah.
normal.
Yeah,
Uh,
but I
but
guess I was surprised that, maybe not surprised, but it was a little weird how easy it was. I mean, at least for me, like the first 6 bosses on normal, we were like falling asleep as healers. We were like, we have nothing to do. There's not any damage going out. What are we doing? And while obviously, we'll get to this in a bit, we hit the only quote unquote wall with Silken Court. I think it would have been interesting to have it be more of a gradual rise up. Have that give us a little bit more of a challenge, but um, you know, I
yeah,
guess we're a
it
heroic rating
certainly
guild.
isn't
We're not looking
heroic.
to, yeah, we're not looking to spend the first month on normal or anything like that. And I
Well, and
guess
we're
it is
4
cool
out
to
of
be,
8, 2 weeks in. Like this raid tier
yeah,
feels like it's going to be not even 2 months at this point.
exactly.
But
Unless we just get
with the
primed by Silken Court, which will be really annoying.
yeah, with the 20th anniversary coming out, it seems like they kind of want people to be done a little bit or on farm with the raid. Then people can focus on delves or Mythic Plus or whatever. Um, Seems like the raid, again, going back to Mythic Plus is killing the game. Delves and Mythic Plus seem to be the focus of at least Season 1, The War Within, over this raid. But I feel like raiding has gotten faster and faster as since we've been a dedicated, me and you have been dedicated raiders for the most part since like Siege of Orgrimmar.
Mhm.
Raiding has definitely gotten faster and faster, I feel, in terms of clearing heroic. So Nexus
Well, yeah,
Princess Kaiveza, this is a cool fight. This is the whole portal thing. Like people probably hate this fight. It's probably really hard. I know Mythic or Liquid just killed it, and they had to use like a weird comp because it's tuned weird or whatever. But fights awesome. It's so cool. It's
oh yeah,
just the portals, the wedges ability with the Fyrak lines. Um, I'm sure it's frustrating as a melee and ranged DPS to have to relocate the portals and stuff. I wish there was a little bit more obvious of the ads once of where the portals were going to move to, the ads that she spawns when the portals are going to move. But overall, it's awesome. There's not really a tank mechanic other than moving her to get the right portal. Really, the taunt swaps at the same time, so it's all kind of together. But this is probably my second favorite fight. Brood
oh
Twister
yeah,
and Nexus Princess are up there for sure. Like the last 4,
yeah.
like I feel like the first 4 bosses we were like, yeah, it's kind of a boss. It does things, man. And now like the last 4 bosses of this raid, these are cool fights. These are fun fights.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
the effects are cool and stuff like that. Nexus, despite us getting absolutely slapped on heroic the first time, Nexus Princess, Kaiveza, and it's cool that there's some Nexus Princess ethereal here doing their ethereal stuff. We can
Oh
go into
yeah,
the lore
and
when we just yap about it maybe next week or something. But
yeah. Well, and I mean, I love they do the classic Nexus princess or Nexus ethereal raid boss thing where we kill her and then she's like, oh well, haha, like
yeah,
we'll put it like
Zymox or
basically like
whatever
well,
in
yeah, like
Castle
we'll just
Nathria,
take
right? Yeah.
they just portal away and be like we know. I mean, while it's not confirmed, pretty likely we're going to be doing something with them later on in the expansion. So
Yeah, being
that's pretty
revealed
cool.
that spoilers, I guess, but it happened in Dragonflight. We know that Zalateth had something to do with the ethereal homeworld being destroyed,
Yeah,
with Koresh being
yeah,
destroyed. So obviously that
exactly.
tie-in.
Yeah,
I don't know why an ethereal would be working with her, but I have my own theories about Zalateth and what she is and stuff. That makes sense.
that's
But
for another
Silken
time. But
Court.
the only thing that
Oh,
oh yeah, I was just gonna throw one more thing about Kaveza, and it is probably the most egregious example of a boss that is super fun in an organized group because it's super rewarding when you have the portals perfectly lined up to being almost impossible on LFR if you don't know what you're doing because you just have like and I remember I forget which alt I was on, but I remember just doing it where there was always one of two things happening with the portals. Either, 4 or 5 people who knew exactly what they were doing were setting up the most perfectly organized, star so no one would get sucked in, or you just had 5 people put their portals in the same exact place and 13 people would die instantly.
yeah, that's why I like
Um,
being tank, because I could see in
awesome.
LFR where the portals were going and kind
Yeah.
of. I'm learning the fight a lot more, but let's move
But
on to Silken Court.
yeah.
We got 5 minutes left on my timer. So Silken Court was the first roadblock we hit in normal. Our first
Mhm.
raid night, we definitely got stopped at this one. But the second night, I think people just got used to the mechanics. I actually don't think heroic's going to be too hard because I think the only change in heroic besides more damage is that multiple teams have to do the web mechanic, the web line,
Mhm.
and we already have multiple teams doing it in normal where we've had backup teams getting ready to
Mhm.
web the boss. I think me and Zio on normal didn't really figure out our tank stuff because the caster boss just sits there casting poison bolt, and I'm not the greatest at magic damage. And Zio can just kind of shrug it off because he's a death knight and heal through it. But I definitely noticed that like if Zio has both bosses after a while, the damage just gets pretty high and his health is yo-yoing all over the place. I don't know if that's just a DK thing or not though, because I literally just don't take physical damage at all.
Mhm.
like I remember this week when we did it on normal, uh, Zio forgot to tank swap twice, and I took 3 tank buster abilities from the big boss and still lived.
Yeah.
It's just like, but that's the physical damage side
Yeah.
that he's throwing out. So it just increases the damage of the next ability or whatever. And overall, it's a fun fight. It's not a bad wall, I think. I don't
Yeah.
know if
Yeah.
it's
No.
tuned for heroic yet because I don't think anybody's really gotten there besides mythic guilds. But
Yeah, yeah, no, and I mean, kind of similar from a healer perspective. Like, seemed like it had a lot of cool. I mean, the dispel mechanic's really interesting, where you're like dispelling someone and have to get the debuff on the boss. We got to get 3 of them. That I think that would be really interesting and will be really interesting on heroic. But we just basically kind of cheesed it, put everyone in the middle, mass dispel, even though that means more damage going out. Like I was saying earlier, like we were kind of falling asleep. I mean, we were for healing. At least the first clear,
yeah.
we were for healing, and then after that, I was able to swap to augmentation because we were like, yeah, we don't need 4 healers
So
for
Queen
normal.
Ansurek on normal, we've only done it, and it's a cool fight. I love fights with multiple phases. I think it's a good end boss fight. The puddle jumping mechanic, the poison jumping mechanic's pretty cool. Uh, Tanking is interesting on her because there's like different tank swaps you have to do, and then the raid splits up, and then you're running and picking up ads and stuff. So it's engaging as a tank at least and stuff, which is fun. Overall, she's definitely like overall it's a good raid. Overall, she's a great final boss. I unfortunately think like lore wise, she's just kind of a footnote. She's not as like she's barely prevalent in the leveling up. You know,
Mhm.
it's all Zalateth all the time, and she's just kind of a stepping stone towards that. I think on heroic it'll be harder for sure than what we've seen. I
Yeah.
think every phase probably adds a new additional mechanic. And I
Yeah.
love the stupid stuff we've realized that like wipes us, like Zio not running away far enough with the ads or whatever in the last phase.
Or
I think we wiped
maybe
on her
not.
at
Yeah.
like 0% once because of
Yeah.
something. So it's just kind of
Yeah.
funny. It definitely
Yeah.
a fight that something can go wrong immediately, but overall, I think it's not one of those fights where you wipe it 0% and you're like, oh, I have to do the whole like intro phase again, which sucks. Like Sire Denathrius was obviously like an A tier fight, but that fight was long, and the
Mhm.
beginning part of that fight was so high stress that you just didn't want to ever do it again. Like it should have stopped and almost like let us have a checkpoint where we've already been sucked downstairs or something because
Yeah.
now,
Yeah.
Ansarek's not
And
like that. The phases are fast, but it is a three-part fight, which is good.
yeah, I mean it is very similar to in a way. I get kind of Razageth vibes from it, where you have like uh the first a first phase, then you have the phase with like the ad phase where you're jumping onto another platform, then having to get knocked back to finish off the boss. But I do at least I kind of enjoy this platform phase a lot more than Razageth's platform phase. I think Razageth would have been a much better fight if you just didn't have that platform phase with the ads in general. Whereas this, the rest of the fight is short enough that that ad phase doesn't feel
Yeah.
too egregious.
So, on a scale from Castle Nathria to a really
Sanctum of
bad dungeon,
Domination to Sanctum of
Sanctum
Domination.
of Domination, yeah, those raids are back to back, but that really is the top and then bottom of rating, I feel. Where would you put Nerub'ar Palace in terms of just overall vibe check?
Yeah, I mean, so far, like I said, I mean, I am surprised that I've been in it as much as I have been, as far as like doing alt runs on normal on my other healers or doing like LFR. I have found myself like more willing to go back into it. So all the fights are like there's no fights that we're pulling up to, and I'm just like, oh boy, here we go again. I don't want to do this fight. That might change as we get on like heroic farm, but at least as of now, it feels new enough. Um, I'd say fairly mid. If I was gonna, I'd say like B minus C plus range. If I was gonna tier rank it type of a thing. Not
Yeah,
anything that I think is gonna go
I
down as like one of the best raids of all time. Maybe having one extra boss. Eight feels like like a short
Yeah,
number.
I would say eight
Um,
feels short. One extra boss would have been nice. I will say, as someone who's played Warcraft 3 and enjoyed the undead race in Warcraft 3, the aesthetic
yeah.
of this,
Oh,
having
the
a
aesthetics are great.
full on, like full Nerubian raid finally in the game feels really good. I like that point. And it's amazing that it's like not literally just all spiders. You know, it's just different spiders, different mutated spiders or whatever. Um, I'd probably give it a little bit higher. I like it. I think we're coming off. I think we are coming off an expansion where there were three banger raids back to back, with Vault of Incarnates, Aberrus, and the tree fight.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, oh yeah,
I think all three of those raids were really good. But I'm thinking back to like BFA. You know, there was the mini raid that was super hard. Honestly, a battle for Tal Dazar was like, Uldir, while having one of my favorite final bosses, kind of just a mid raid. Um, Ajara's Palace is like honestly forgettable. to me. Nyalotha was big and cool, 12 bosses kind of thing. But I would say it's for a beginning rate, because you have to really look at everything in the frame of like, this is season 1 now of the World Soul Saga, right? This is just the first step, and I think it's a good first step.
Oh, for sure.
I think we're setting up Xalatath. I haven't gotten sick of her yet. I think she's a great villain, especially with the Mythic Plus effects that we just experienced this week, which was a lot of fun. We can probably talk about that more, but next week I don't know what we're going to talk about yet, but maybe we'll just yap about the expansion in general, just go on tangents for a half hour or so. But
Yeah.
I want to thank you for being here, Theo, and thank our listeners. If you want to hear more and tune in next week, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe so you know when we put the podcast out next week. It's gonna be kind of a slow start in a casual start, but I think this episode will be a big improvement on last week's episode. So,
Yep.
all right, we will see you guys next week, and yeah, bye.